Last call, senators. If you have not checked in, please check in as expeditiously, and then please take your seats. We're about to get started soon.
I hereby call this meeting to order at 6:36 p.m. And good evening to each and every one of you. Before we get started, I do offer up a trigger warning for individuals impacted by this. On March 13th, 3 Michigan State University students were killed and 5 were left in critical condition. Our hearts go out to those impacted and for those struggling with the aftermath of the mass shootings. Out of respect for their memory, I ask the Senate and the student body to join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you. At this time, we will move into section 2, swearing in. Is there anybody here who has not been sworn in yet? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, we will move to section 3, roll call with Advisor McLean.
With 38 members present, simple majority is 20, 2/3 majority of present members is 25, and then 2/3 of student senate is 42.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move to section 4, public forum and presentations. Public forum provides a chance for the individuals to have the privilege of speaking before the Senate. This is a time for the association to listen to what the community has to say. And to that, we do offer our undivided respect and attention. I would like to remind everyone that although we allow the speakers the privilege to use this platform, the opinions of the speakers do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the association nor the university. At this time, I do know that it's not on the agenda, but Amy Bauman did submit a request to speak during public forum, and she is the Graduate Student Council President. Is Amy here and wishes to speak? All right. Seeing that she is not here, we'll move on. I know this is also not on the agenda, but we did receive a request from Kean Williams as well as Noah Carter, and so the floor is yours.
Good evening, Senators, guests of the Senate, and fellow students. Tonight we come before you in support of Michigan State University and those who lost their lives in the tragedy that occurred on Monday. We already held a moment of peace, a moment of silence, but we would ask that those who are religious would keep Michigan State University in your prayers, and those who are not would reflect during this time on what has happened. Monday night, 3 Michigan State students were killed and 5 injured in a heartbreaking shooting on campus. Losing a loved one is hard enough, but when this loss is caused by the actions of evil and horrible people, this difficulty is unimaginable. There's no amount of words that can describe the suffering that these events cause, and no amount of support that can be offered to the families of those who have been affected that will ease their pain. Tomorrow, most of us will not even think about this tragedy a single time, but those who have been affected by it will likely never forget. A month from now, society will have moved on, but the parents of this deceased will still have to look at the rooms left by their children who they can never hold again and wonder why. This evening, we ask the student body of our Wichita State University for their love, their support, and their deepest condolences for those affected by this tragedy. For Michigan State University, your student body, and the family of those lost, know that the whole of this community is with you.
What happened at Michigan State University was nothing short of a tragedy. This was yet another example of senseless gun violence in communities no different than ours, and in learning institutions just like Wichita State. Innocent students being gunned down in a place of learning, a place of safety. Director Carter and I wanted to make a statement tonight standing in solidarity with our friends at Michigan State University and in mourning for those that not only lost their lives, but lost their innocence, their place of safety, their sense of community. We know that the East Lansing community will come together during these difficult times, and that their strength and grit will allow them to emerge stronger and closer than ever before. But another senseless act of gun violence should not have to be the catalyst for such growth. We've become so desensitized to the issue that we can read a dozen breaking news headlines and not flinch. We go about our days like hundreds of young people didn't just have their innocence ripped from them. But for now, we offer Michigan State community our love and compassion. But we also offer them something even greater, hope. We all stand here today believing, without a shadow of a doubt, that their community is strong, that Michigan State will come back unassailable and more courageous than ever, because courage is not the absence of fear itself, but the persistence and survival in the face of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken and Noah, for that. At this time, we will now move into Section 5, Introductions and Reports, starting with Item 1, Report from the Executive Branch. Vice President Thornton.
Hello, everybody. I will be brief. I know I am not Vice President Thornton, but we wanted to trade off on some things that are happening coming in the next couple of weeks, and then something that actually happened in the last 24 hours. Wichita State was represented up in Topeka these past 2 days, and having the chance to speak with legislators on the floor, being able to go to their offices, talk with them about the problems that we're having here at WSU, talking about the issues in Kansas as a whole. We had all of the other state schools in Kansas tabling, having conversations. I'm sure that you have seen some photos. We had WU there. It was a very good opportunity to interact with our Kansas Board of Regents, with our state legislators, Jay Thompson, our director of legislative director, and myself had a meeting with our Wichita State representative up at WSU, up at Topeka. It was a great time. He had very specific questions of how WSU, with our reconstruction projects that are happening, how is that affecting students? What can he do to help us all out? And then on the House floor, we were given a chance to go to the Speaker's office and have a conversation with him. How does he run things? What are some things that we can do going forward to make our student government a very efficient place, more so than it already is? I had a junior with me, Speaker Van Dyke with me when we spoke with them. He went with me with all of the meetings, for the most part, that we went to. We had a couple of representation from the legislative branch, because one thing that we have been saying all year, that this is not an executive issue, this is a student government issue. We went together as a united front to best represent our school, and I'm very, very proud to say that it is very impressive what we have done. Many legislators, Republicans, Democrats, all of the individuals at this event came to us telling us how proud they were of all of us Shockers. They came to us telling us that it's never a shock to what, no pun intended, but it's never a shock to see what is happening at WSU, because of the fact that we always put our best foot going forward as much as we possibly can, and to see what we have done. I wanted to personally say that I'm very proud of all of you as a Senate, as a legislative branch, and as a student government, because the representation that we have here at WSU has reflected, and you have been seen. Your words have been noticed, your advocacy has been noticed, and everything you've done has been seen by higher individuals. And I personally wanted to say thank you. It's not over. It's not April. We're still here. We're still going to be working as hard as we possibly can. I know that you are too. So I wanted to update you with all of this. This is a once-a-year thing. It happens every year. But we as WSU, as Shockers, did a good thing, and I'm proud of all of you. Mary Elizabeth?
Sweet. Thank you for that update on Higher Ed Day. Some dates coming up that I would like for everybody to keep on their calendars so that they can show up and show out. We do have a tailgate coming up for the men's basketball blackout game on February 23rd. The tentative time is 4 p.m., but more details will come soon. We also have Wellness Week coming up, February 27th, the week of February 27th. And then finally, our Student Fees Commission appointments have been made. I just want to say thank you to everyone who helped push the application and encouraged people to apply. I really appreciate all of your efforts to get our community involved in the student fees commission process. So thank you, and that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you for that report. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, thank you again for that report. We'll now move into item 2 under section 5, report from the Speaker of the Senate. I did also attend, as President Kirk mentioned, the higher education day at the Capitol. I have also met with the task force that I mentioned about a few weeks ago at the Senate retreat, and the task force is currently preparing a report to give to the rest of the Senate body, so I will keep you all updated with that as we proceed along. Additionally, I will be out of town for the remainder of this week, starting tomorrow. So if you have any questions, please reach out to Speaker Pro Temp Williams or Advisor McLean. I felt a sneeze coming on, I'm sorry. Other than that, I do not have any other updates. Are there any questions for me? Seeing none, I will move to item 3, report from Senate leadership, starting with Speaker Pro Temp Williams.
Like President Kirk and Speaker Van Dyke, I had the pleasure of traveling up to Topeka to speak with several state legislators and discuss student issues. I'm happy to say that we were very well received and had a very successful and enjoyable day. Also, the Government Relations Committee is continuing its work on the Studying Lacrosse Campus Coalition, and we'll make sure everybody's updated on the progress and the workings of the coalition. That should be all I have, but I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, we will now hear a report from Chairperson Lesnick. And I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to give space for individuals in the gallery to ask questions at this time. I do apologize. I'm sorry? Applied online? We will allow space for you to speak when we get to the portion of your bill.
So, good evening, Senators. First and foremost, I would like to address some concerns that have been expressed and raised. We have been working really hard. We have currently about 19 requests that are still hanging and being processed. You will see, I believe, 3 of them today on the floor, and about a whole bunch more are coming up in the next Senate meeting. We do have only $992 left in our individual funding, and we have about 6 more individual funding requests to hear. You will also see some individual funding requests coming up today and some next Senate meeting that we have already processed. So our funding is extremely limited. I do want to emphasize we have less than $1,000 and 6 more individual funding requests, majority of whom are requesting over $1,000. And every one of those requests is very important, and every one of those individuals are trying to do great things for their academic or professional careers. And we try our best to let as many individuals as possible to take advantage of those opportunities. So we are there to hear them out and to make sure that we provide them the best opportunity possible to travel, to get what they need to get done. I also would like to remind you that as our bylaws stand, under Article 8, Chapter 1, Section 2.2, priority for individual applications shall be served on a first-come, first-served basis. So unfortunately, we cannot fund everybody, and whoever applied for the funding first will get it first as well. And lastly, to give update on our organizational funding, which is doing a lot better so far, we have about $6,500 left in that, and we have also some requests hanging in that. So moving on from that, going back to my initial point, we do have 19 requests that we're currently working on. As well, the committee has moved forward with SB-65-104, Reestablishing Major Events Fund, which you will see today on the floor. We have made, I believe, 1 amendment to it. As well, we are getting ready to make our connections with financial aid and discuss them potentially coming and talking to us about some concerns that also have been expressed. Lastly, 4 senators from my committee have been able, and we're both delegated to write bills, so that is really awesome. So far, everybody's doing great, and I really appreciate the opportunity to teach them how to do that. And lastly, I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for that report. Senator Martins, is there anything to report for academic affairs? Thank you.
Good evening, Senators. So Academic Affairs did not meet this past week, but I did want to let everyone know that we worked on our initiatives the week before, and our initiatives are now working on academic freedom, continuing our work with first-year seminars, and then going into our next one, working with tenured professors and ratings, and that CES assessment, also known as SPTE, but it was changed to CES. Our third initiative would be working with academic advising and researching and addressing student involvement and retention rates. And our last one is working with ODS and OIEC work, or disability services and international students. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for that report. Senator Howard, is there any report for Ways and Means?
Yeah, so we met with this student organization last week called the Art Exploration Organization, I believe, and I'm going to get up and talk about that when it's time to. But other than that, I know that Chairperson Harmon has talked with some other student organizations, but we haven't been presented those yet, so those are still in the works. And then we have our commentary project coming up that should be wrapping up around the 22nd to the 25th of February.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for that report. And Senator Pang, is there any report for DEI?
Yes, so good evening, Senators. We did not meet today in committee. Next week, we will be meeting again with the Joint Committee, the DEI and the Safety and Student Services, to finalize the resolution given to us. The committee's next Let's Talk About It will be February 22nd in the RSC, first floor, from 11 to 1:30, and graphics will be coming out soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, thank you for that report. At this time, we will move to item 4 under Section 5, report from the Senate Advisor, Advisor McLean.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as you can see, I'm not sitting at my usual spot, but I like it up here, so we might make some changes. No, we're not. I just, as I put in the group meet, just please remember that next Wednesday is the deadline if you are looking to come back to Senate and or go for after the presidential or vice presidential ticket opportunity as well. If you have any questions about that, please just let either myself, Advisor Fonseca, or any of the members of the Elections Commission know. We'll be more than happy to help you out as we proceed. And then just a final thing, just please make sure that you're scheduling your Senator one-on-ones. I'll do what I did last time around, which seemed to really work. So for those who haven't scheduled them, I will call you out next Senate meeting on the camera. So please make sure that you're scheduling that. Again, if I need to put that link in Teams, just please let me know, and I will do that expeditiously.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Yes, Senator Cunningham.
Sorry, just to clarify, when you said the applications were closing, do you mean for Senate leadership positions or Senate positions in general?
Senate positions in general. We'll handle leadership in the next session.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Advisor McLean at this time? Seeing none, I will now move to item 5, report from the Association Advisor, Advisor Fonseca.
I have no report for this week.
Thank you, Advisor Fonseca. We will now move to Section 6, approval of the consent agenda. Are there any objections to the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, the consent agenda is adopted as such. And congratulations to Valeria Panetto, as she is now the Safety and Student Services Chairperson. All right, at this time, we will now move to Section 7, consideration of pending business. Item 1 under Section 7, the advisor will read.
Bear with me here. First reading of SB-65-104, reestablishing the Major Events Fund.
And this is the second read. However, due to the length that was in between, I will allow the authors to briefly rediscuss this bill.
Good evening, and thank you all for another Wednesday evening of service. Forgive me. Tonight, it could be an investment on the future. From what I have gathered, the top concerns related to the passage of the reestablishing of the Major Events Fund bill are A, this takes away from the opportunity to fund groups and departments surrounding wellness, student services, and diversity and inclusion, and B, the bill does not guarantee efficient use of those funds. I would just like to take a few minutes and address these concerns. While valid and agreeable, I caution against mutual exclusivity of this subject. We share your concerns about student needs being addressed, and the Cabinet has spent the entire school year working hard to increase return on investment for students. We're doing this through requesting support from the Kansas Board of Regents, as well as giving Caitlin Nolan and staff whatever they need to keep the Shocker locker stocked. Continuing advocation with university and state leadership that we will not back down on addressing this century's mental health crisis. Pushing university and city leadership to expand the transit system to better accommodate non-traditional student mobility, not giving up on Diversity Week, and making sure it establishes itself as an annual event, not a one-time thing. Recognizing the commitment student athletes make to the university and working with athletics to bring partnership on increasing student turnout at games of all sports, and securing funding to bring free, quality, and sustainable menstrual products to campus restrooms. Thank you, Senate. And planning throughout this session, sponsoring major events has also been identified as an area where we have the ability to make a difference on a consistent year-to-year basis. First of all, it is a fact that passage of this bill would mark a large amount of money off the books for the Student Fees Commission to no longer delegate. This is true. Second, it is also valid to say that the future of major events at WSU has a stake in aiding wellness, student services, and diversity and inclusion. Yes, CAPS and Student Health Services do tremendous work to support the student body. And for that, they have earned respect they deserve on campus and in student fees discussions. We as the facilitators of this funding have the obligation to not only continue their financial support, we agree about that, but also to finish the job by providing chances for students to leave their dorm, meet new friends, interact with community, witness the performance of a person or group they look up to, and be a part of something big and memorable. A popular discussion right now is about Chris Olsen's invitation to campus. I will be one of the first to admit that I don't have TikTok, and I don't know who he is. But the point of increasing the frequency of major events on campus is so more factions of the population feel noticed and more shared interests are catered to. If passed, this bill would open up pathways to bring entertainment for groups of students that may not have been interested in Wale or Chris Olsen. Part of what I like about the students at Wichita State is that we are not afraid to share about what makes us passionate. And we want this same concept to continue, providing a financial platform to enable bringing diverse artists to campus is important in promoting the variety of cultures here. Thank you to the students that have been welcoming enough to discuss this with us in the past few weeks. We hear you. I'm here to say that we can all come together and deliver for the students on the accounts of both of our priorities. As such, I also speak in favor of the prioritization of funding resolution by Senator Liu, Pacheco, Jones, and Owens. Student fees increases reflect tuition, which is due for its first increase in a few years. While there are no guarantees before the fees packet reaches the Senate, the anticipated fee increase, as well as a push for large fees recipients to strategize reducing spending, leads me to say the Student Fees Commission will have slightly more flexibility in considering your recommendation of priorities, even after major events funding. If the concerns about this bill are that these social effects are not guaranteed, then let's amend within reason to make it more clear, certain, and effective. I, President Kirk, and Advisors McLean and Fonseca stand by for questions as this discussion unfolds today. I urge you to consider voting in favor of this legislation, even those of you who have already made up your mind. Thank you, and I stand for questions.
Unfortunately, this is the second read, so we will not move into questions. However, I do offer a friendly amendment. Do you have the bill? Access to it?
In here?
Okay. I'm gonna be very specific on the location that I'm going to. However, so under section 6, funding administration, subsection number 2, which reads, any allocated dollars remaining at the conclusion of the association's fiscal year will be swept into the major events fund for reallocation. My friendly amendment is to change the word from of swept to placed.
Friendly.
Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry.
So I don't think you can do friendly anymore since the bill has been amended by a committee. So every amendment from here on out has to be voted on. One, and can I say a second thing? Your change of swept to, what was the word?
Placed.
So we use swept all across our rules and regulations as a basic language of what it means when we move money from unspent money from its main account back into its holding account. So I would caution against changing it here when language across the rest of the rules and regulations uses the term swept. Would be my advice, but of course, right? Feel free to make that change if you want, but then we would create some confusion of placed and swept in other places when we talk about it.
Because I still do believe that the term swept can allude to other things, and I will worry about the rest of the rules and regulations at a later time, I will motion to amend the word swept in section 6, subsection 2 to placed. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Senator Wassinger. So again, I do believe that the term swept can allude to a number of different things, which is why I do motion that it be changed to the word or term placed. So I will move into the debate period of this. Is there anybody who wants to speak in affirmation or negation of this? Senator Berry?
I will be speaking in negation of the bill. Since we already established that swept is the...
In negation of the bill or the...
sorry, not the bill,
Okay.
the amendment, I apologize.
Thank you.
Since, like Advisor Fonseca said, swept is used regularly throughout the entire rules and regulations, I think it is really a good thing to keep these kind of things consistent. And to where we don't run into a situation to where they don't know that, I mean, they might know that this bill existed, but later down the line, it's going to be seen as a discrepancy when we know it's deliberate. But I feel like in the future, they would not take very well to it being moved instead of swept. So again, negation, I want to keep it as swept.
Thank you, Senator Berry. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in this debate period? Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. Please remember to turn your clickers on by clicking the power button and then click AA to sign in. And then here in just a moment, I'll let you know that the voting is open. A is yes to adopt the amendment, B is no, and C is abstain.
Waiting on a couple more votes. Just waiting on 2. Waiting on one more person. Okay, with 9 in favor, 23 against, and 6 abstentions, the amendment fails.
Thank you. So at this time, I will also allow space for the Budget and Finance Chairperson to speak on the amendments that came from her committee.
Yes, so my committee has only added one more line. It is, let me look what chapter it is. It's a long chapter. It's under section 2, chapter 7, section 6.4. And it stands as this fund shall not exceed a 3 fiscal year allocation cap. And this is basically to ensure if that funding does not get used within the 3 fiscal years, that we do not take any more money from student fees and put it in there, since it's obviously not being used. Now that is assuming that would ever happen.
Thank you. So at this time, we will now enter into the debate period. Is there anybody who would like to speak in affirmation or negation of this bill, starting with Speaker Pro Tem Williams?
After a great deal of thought, I find myself voting against the Major Events Fund. I believe that if we can agree that $6 per student in fees should be set aside for a new fund or a fund needing improvement, I think we should agree on that and then debate where that money should go. I don't disagree that the Major Events Fund would be beneficial to the campus and our students, but I believe that there are different priorities that are higher on the list and should get this allocation and this priority first. A big purpose of the Major Events Fund is to increase retention and improve student life, but what else can do that? A fully stocked and expanded support locker, wages for our GTAs that are more than just pennies, bonds to pay for convenient parking and affordable housing close to campus, free therapy for all students. I don't want to compare these projects, as they are all unique and they have higher priority to different students based on their needs and different reasons. But that is a debate that probably needs to happen before we can carve out funds from student fees for a purpose. And for that reason, I encourage you to vote against this fund.
Thank you, Senator Warden.
Hi, it's more of a point of inquiry for either Jay or someone that might have better knowledge on it. When we got the head count for WALA, do you know how long that took to get that information?
The head count, can you explain what you mean?
So like when the whole venue happened, and we got the numbers for how many people attended, I want to know how long that took.
To get attendance numbers?
Yeah.
I mean, the way that we, from my understanding, that was sold by tickets, and so we were able to count immediately from that. If they instituted a card swipe, so they'd be able to pull that information as quickly as we could. And so because my understanding is the Wale concert was by a ticket sale. Once the event was over, they gave them the total number of tickets that were sold, and we were able to tell at that point what the total attendance was. And if two, they decided to do a card swipe with your student ID, the same thing, they'd be able to pull that information right after that event was over.
All right, thank you.
Senator Wassinger?
I also had a point of inquiry. For the Wale concert, I hope I'm saying that right. Is that right? Last year, were there discounted tickets for the people in the Fairmont community or like in the zip code of Wichita State?
I'm unaware of that. Okay. I'm going to go with the assumption that no. From my understanding, for that specific event, the Student Activities Council has like a set price based off of events and whatnot, and it's not my understanding that there were any tickets sold. However, the president of that organization is present, and I'd be happy to yield my time to them should the speaker be okay with her answering that question, because I generally do not know that answer.
Yes.
So then I would yield my floor to Maureen. If you know that answer, you probably have to come up here for the mic. Yeah, over here. Or I didn't even see Assistant Director Hill. So either, probably Tia would be the best person. So I'd give the floor to Tia to answer that question, if that's still okay, Mr. Speaker. All right.
So the simple answer is no, and the reason being for that is because your student fee dollars pay for it, so the discounted rates are provided towards the student tickets. And so like if we were to get additional sponsorship, we could offer that, or if community engagement or the Fairmount community wanted to offer that up as a sponsorship, but unless that happens, we wouldn't be able to give that discount because then it wouldn't be a good use of your student fee dollars. Okay?
Thank you, Senator Coons.
I also have a point of inquiry. So if SAC made $18,000 in revenue from the Wale concert in 2022 and Chris Olsen cost $27,500, where did the extra funds for Chris Olsen come from, and potentially where will the funds for Saint Motel come from?
So I would encourage us to separate the two, the information that we're looking at to help kind of base where we were with it, and based off of where future events are coming from. So one, I would encourage that as we debate the premise of this bill, that we focus primarily on what the bill is doing and asking for, is part A. The second part, I lost my train of thought, so could you repeat your question and then I will have an answer for that. Sorry.
Okay, I'm just wondering where the extra funds for Chris Olsen are coming from, since it's this Friday and they only had an allotted $18,000.
So the concert in the spring, right, made money to help offset the cost of the event. So while that money doesn't necessarily carry over in any of those type of events, right, those dollars wouldn't necessarily carry over from a year to year. They would help offset the total cost of the event. My understanding is that the Chris Olsen event that's happening this Friday, is also coming from a current budget that the Student Activities Council has to pay for that event. So while there are dollars that are allocated out of the student fees pool to go into, for example, the Student Activities Council, there are still very limited dollars in those areas. And so my understanding is that the cost for the Chris Olsen event is coming from current budgets that are there, because it's, while $27,000 sounds like a lot of money, it's a lot cheaper than when you think about a $100,000 concert that's been put on. Does that answer your question fully? Maybe not? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Advisor McLean.
And just based on some of my conversations with a handful of you all, I also want to clarify this for the rest of the room. This is not $100,000 going only to SAC. This is also $100,000 that are being utilized for all of our student groups and departments as well. So just be very mindful of that. I understand that we've steered conversations towards a Chris Olsen, a Wale, people like that, which are, again, major events, but there are more than those going on campus, and there will be more than those on campus, and not just coming through SAC. So just be very mindful of that as we proceed with this conversation.
Senator Patterson.
I have a point of inquiry as well. I was wondering how much annually is already allocated from student fees for major events?
Specifically for major events, $0. The cost of where, in this example, the Student Activities Council is a line item out of campus activities, out of the student fees budget, to pay for the other events that also happen on campus that are hosted by the Activities Council. So to cover the cost of major events, there are no dollars that are pre-allocated solely for the use of major events.
Senator Liu.
Also, a point of inquiry, I noticed a lot of questions, a lot of hands raised when Jay was speaking. Can we bring him back up to answer any questions we may have?
I will allow it. We will move into the back into the questioning period. Are there any senators who have questions at this time? Additional questions? Senator Liu.
So this goes to what you're saying about how this money will go into student fees, in that you mentioned if on passage of this bill, it will take $6 away from the current student fees budget. Does that mean the student fees commission will not vote on this, or is it just simply a request to the student fees commission?
It would still be a part of the vote, but it would be, and the correct terminology is earmark. So that money would be set aside from the deliberations of student fees. But when voting on the student fees packet, it would be part of the packet. Is that incorrect, Advisor Fonseca?
So, no, but so I think further on from there, when the Senate, so ultimately, the Senate's the one who adopts the student fees budget. So if the Senate, through its power of the purse, decides to earmark dollars, then those dollars are earmarked, which means it would be the first $6 put on to the student fee. Every year we go to student fees, we start with a dollar amount that is decreased based off of the budgets that are already approved, and we reduce it to only match the numbers that we're looking at. So the earmark language is, just as Director Thompson mentioned, it will put the $6 there that the commission won't be able to say no to, because ultimately the budget is adopted by the student senate. And if the Senate approves an earmark, then it is earmarked, and they would be able to review it and look at it. But the ability for them to take it off is not would not be up to them at that point. So this is similar to when we established the appropriations fund. We earmarked money to pay for that 2 years ago. And at that point, the same thing, the Student Fees Commission reviewed it, looked at it, provided feedback, or had conversations about it, but ultimately, because it was adopted by the Senate, there was no ability to for them to take that back. Third example, and just to kind of provide some other things, last year when the Student Government Administration, Executive Administration adopted a $10 increase to all student positions, we did not use earmark language, so the Student Fees Commission had to review that and then it ultimately adopted the dollars for it. So because the term earmarked is there, it will then require that dollar amount is separated out. Does that answer your question fully, Senator? Okay.
Director Thompson, I don't know if you can answer this, and you probably already said something earlier. However, out of the student body population, can you, or maybe Assistant Director Hill, tell me how many students attended either the Wale concert, or how many students have signed up to attend? I don't know if there's an RSVP form for this upcoming event, but can you give me a rough estimate of the amount of students out of the student body population?
Out of the student population, I do not have that number.
Would Advisor Fonseca?
I would imagine that Assistant Director Hill would. Do you have that off the top of your head? You have to come up here. Sorry.
So as I mentioned when we presented the bill in an open forum, we do not have those numbers specifically for Wale of how many students actually attended, because we use the Coke Arena ticketing system, which is not authenticated through Banner, and therefore you can't ask additional questions. We did have a specific number of student tickets that were sold in advance. However, at the door, they were all the same rate, so therefore you could not separate or identify who was student versus who was public. So that is something we're trying to work on for future events, but at this time there is no number comparison for that.
Even if there's not a number set in stone, would you have a rough estimate?
That would be an assumption I do not want to make.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? Senator Martins?
I have a question for Director Thompson, and it may have been in the presentation, and it's just been so long since I've seen it. There was a survey done of students willing to raise student fees for this. How many students were actually surveyed?
I would not know an accurate number, but I would defer to Advisor Fonseca or McLean.
If you give me a second to pull it up, I will. So if we move to the next question, an answer by the time we're back.
Senator Warden?
Yeah, would we be able to have those numbers by next Senate, which would be March 1st?
So I want to clarify what Assistant Director Hill said. So there's no way for us to know the student number because of the way the ticket was, but to
Right.
know the total number of tickets sold, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
955.
For Wale? Okay.
Senator Wassinger.
Yeah, so I apologize if this is redundant because I was not in attendance when we originally went over this bill. But for this bill, the specification is we can create, or I guess recreate this fund, but this body has no oversight on where or how those major events are crafted or who's being brought in or anything, right?
Specifically, the Senate body, no.
Who
However,
is the oversight? Yeah.
The oversight, so the commission, would be made up of the president, vice president, and treasurer of the association, as well as the speaker and 2 members of legislative leadership up to the discretion of the speaker, with the chief of staff serving as the clerk.
Thank you. Advisor Fonseca, did you have an answer?
Yeah, so there were a total of 400 students who completed the survey.
Senator Liu.
I have another question related to that survey. So it looks like, I'm looking at the presentation you presented last meeting. It said 24% were strongly for, and looks like 28% was somewhat for major events using student fees. In this survey, did you explain to students what student fees are and how our student fees are different in that it funds a whole host of student services?
Deferred.
What a wonderful question, Senator Liu. And as we were reviewing that survey, the light bulb in Director Dix in my head went off of, no, we did not. And I think we have used the same question for the past 4 or 5 years that the survey has been done, to my knowledge, because I just inherited the survey. And so, no, we did not specify, though should we have? Yes, because I think the general student would not know the difference between the student service fee versus the rest of the fees that show up on your bill, right? A good example that was brought up was business students recently saw a $100 increase to their, I think that's correct, don't correct me if I'm wrong there, but saw an increase to their college fee, and they would categorize that as a student fee when we think about putting it all together in the student fee pool. So no, but in the future, when we do this survey again, we are going to specify what we are talking about when we talk about this specific fee. So no, but should the genius that we should have been a couple of weeks ago thought about that, we would have done that. But what a wonderful question, Senator Liu.
Advisor McLean.
I wanted to also address Senator Wassinger's question as well. I also wanted to say that although there is a set commission charged with issuing the funds, the Senate does have general oversight over the funds after that point. So if Budget and Finance wanted to call forward whatever organization or members of the commission to talk about some of these things, you do all, or not just Budget and Finance, but the rest of the Senate, you all do have that authority to do so as well. I just want to make that very clear.
And to do so, they would request the presence of the treasurer, the chair of the commission.
Are there any last questions at this time? Senator Ratna?
Hi. So kind of piggybacking off of that question, what is the commission's process with, like, if this follows through, with explaining to the general student what all of this like Senate lingo means? Because like a lot of people don't know what agencies are or various other terms.
That's a good question. The main thing that an organization wanting to propose a major event would need to know ahead of time is, so Section 3, 1.1 through 3, the requirements for submitting a proposal. We would typically, if a group is wanting to propose a major event, they would have to go through or at least be in discussions with groups that are involved with the seal office. So the general oversight of the planning would typically have access to advising, which would have knowledge of these stipulations.
Mr. Speaker, can I add to that? In addition, because we have staff we have staff that advise student organizations all over campus, and so that would be a good resource for them to tap into. I think to the bigger part of your question of how will student organizations know that these dollars are available, it'd be the same way that we would market directly to student groups currently right now about appropriation funding, organizational funding, and so the way we would open it would be the similar. My understanding, if it existed today, the way that we would probably open it would be the very similar way that we would open appropriations, directly communication to student organizations that would be eligible to apply for it, the same way we would open funding for organizational funding, same communication process that we do directly to the student organizations, probably utilizing our student organizations director, our staff to be able to help provide the resources and support to the student groups who would apply for it, just as we do right now for those other two funds that are available for the organizations to apply for it. Does that answer your question between the both of us?
Go ahead.
So this might be just a clarifying question for Director Thompson, but so not just RSOs can apply for this, right? Like it can just be a group of students, but do they need to be in contact with an RSO even if it's just a group of students?
Where would that be read? Could you scroll up, Brendan? Yes. I'm not sure I have an answer for that question. Advisor Fonseca, do you have an interpretation?
Yeah. I'm going to be very honest. I think it would be highly impossible for a group of students to plan something like this. And I believe the commission would also highly question a group of students not affiliated with an organization. Now, doesn't mean that they can't, right? Yes, if today Mary Elizabeth and I were like, you know what, let's have this whatever event. Let's bring Beyonce to campus. We don't have that money, so I'm just crazy, right? Like, it would be highly improbable for the both of us, even if it was us in this first row of students here and senators, to say, let's go do this, right? The expertise of putting on something like that would come from an organization that's already established, an agency that already has the ability to do so, department organizations that already have the skill set to do something like that. However, right, nothing in this language precludes a group of students to say, we want to bring Beyonce to campus. However, the stop would be the commission making sure that if we're going to give this money, that we have every single thing figured out before we sign off on giving the dollars. So I would assume and or hope that the commission responsible for allocating those dollars would highly question just Mayor Elizabeth and I to say we're going to bring Beyonce to campus without having thought about anything that goes into, and that's just an example, without having thought about anything that kind of goes into all of the details to put something on like that. Again, doesn't say that we can't connect with this group or that group to say, hey, you are experts at this. Can we join you in planning that, right? There's nothing to say that can't happen, but I would imagine that the commission would stop that before they say, yes, here's the money. There is language in there that does require the treasurer to notify the Senate when a decision has been made. And so my hope at that point also would be a senator saying, wait, you're just letting two students spend this money? And then hopefully the Senate would use its power to stop that as well. And so I think there's a lot of checkpoints before a determination of dollars is expended. And I exist. And so I think I would also question that group to say, are we really going to do that? So yes, and I won't always forever be here, but whoever is in my role hopefully would also have, right, the ultimate person responsible for those dollars hopefully would also say, yeah, maybe we should rethink that.
If I may add, if the desire is for that to be stipulated very clearly, then I think it would be applicable to the bylaws to be able to do so.
I will allow for 3 more questions, starting with Senator Patterson.
I just kind of have a point of clarification. So would this work similarly to other funding requests that come before the Senate within a reimbursement process, or would the funds just be given?
I can get it. So the fund would be opened up and accessible to them at the moment that it was approved by the commission. That would be the same process as any other. Here's where I lose the wording. Advisor Fonseca.
Yes, we would just have it billed to that account. So it wouldn't be like the organizational funding where they have to reimburse it. It'd be like the appropriations one where we have the dollars and we pay the bill for you.
Senator Wassinger.
Yeah, so sorry. Can we break this down one more time for me? In reference to like the Wale concert with this piece of legislation, if it goes through, is the Wale concert like 100% a go exactly as it is with this $100,000 that's been allocated, or a portion of it? Or will we have an opportunity to like alter or at least discuss the Wale event before these dollars are used for that?
So that would be the commission's job to deliberate that specifically. If there are more guidelines, steps to this process that would be desired by this body, that would also be applicable to the bylaws if a change were to be desired. Advisor Fonseca.
Advisor Fonseca, give me 1 second. Can you repeat that, please, just one more time, a little bit louder into the microphone, just so Senator Madden can hear you?
Could you repeat your question?
Yes. So just in reference to the dollars, is it going to go exactly to the Wale concert, or is it going to be like the commission takes it, they agree, and then it comes back to us, or the commission says yes and then it's a go?
The commission says yes and then it's a go. But there would still be financial oversight with the treasurer and the commission should anything want to be reviewed.
Advisor Fonseca.
So let's do this. We'll use the Wale as an example. Like, let's pretend that never happened, and that's what we're planning for now. I think I want to explain that the process to get an artist is an extensive process, and so I think the thought process of what I imagine former student governments who had this fund years ago did was, we could come and say, here's who we're bringing, and a week later, that artist says, I don't want to go. Or they don't accept the price that is presented to them. And so knowing that the reason I think your predecessors established a group like that to make that decision was because it can change within 2 weeks. If we bring it to the Senate and our meetings are live streamed and everything is public, which, right, there's nothing wrong with that, and the Senate approves it, the very next day, that artist could drop out, and now we're starting over again. And so I think just from a consistency, not an efficiency standpoint of looking at, the decision is made, and we can move into then offering a contract to whoever it is, and there is, I think to the point you're trying to get to, I don't think there is necessarily a bad thing to say the Senate wants an ability to say yes or no. However, knowing that means, or the end result of that could also mean you'll be seeing it 4, 5, 6 times if in the event we can't settle on a contract with someone, or we adopt it one day and then the next week it's gone and we're starting over. And so I think just knowing how that type of process works out, whether it be a concert, whether it be a major speaker, whether it be whatever kind of large-scale event that we'd be bringing someone in to contract for, can change literally in the snap of a finger. I think knowing the conversations that I've had about even the Wale concert last year took us a second to get to that point. The one that we're looking at for the spring semester took us a second to get to that point. Hopefully he's not watching, but the Chris Olsen one, we signed that a couple weeks ago. And so just knowing that the process can be extensive, to me would bring, I would advise some concern of saying that the Senate has to adopt it, because we could keep adopting it every single meeting or every other week because of just how fluid a process like this can be. And that, again, a concert to major speaker to whatever it is, that it's a long, extensive process. And so I think the commission, if the concern is it's too small, if we feel like we need more senators in it, if we feel like whatever, right? I think knowing that, but I think, and I don't want to speak for Director Thompson, but I think that we're open for those conversations. But I think that's the reason why I think your predecessors, when this existed in 2012 and earlier, was because of that fluidity of that process.
And if I can add further thoughts, with this exact scenario in mind, Section 3.2 was also written into the bill, which would account for any chance a major revision to the proposal is warranted, where they could correct anything that has changed following the submission.
I will allow for one more question. Or none? Okay, so we will now move into the debate period. As we transition into the debate period, I will say that while it does bother me that I cannot confidently speak in affirmation of this, I will be speaking in affirmation of this. It bothers me that from the people who got tickets for the Wale concert, that was only roughly about 3 to 5% or 3 to 6% of the student body last year, based off of the people who purchased tickets, plus whatever other percentage of students would have showed up at the door. In my opinion, that is still a low percentage. However, I do take into high consideration that we are here to serve the students, and I do fully believe that the major events bill proposal is adequate to serve students and to provide an opportunity for students, and I think that it may need room for improvement, but I think it is a step in the right direction. Therefore, I will speak in affirmation of this bill. Senator Warden.
Hi, I actually want to move to table this until the next Senate, which is March 1st.
Is there a second? Seconded from Senator Cunningham. Would you like to talk on that?
Yeah. So just
Go ahead.
okay. So just seeing the amount of questions first off tonight, this just makes me feel a little more uncomfortable trying to vote on it now when we still have another 2 weeks to just sit on these answers. I also want to point out that I would rather hear about how many tickets were made for the Chris Olsen thing, and rather than just compare it to Wale. Because for me personally, I know who Chris Olsen is. I don't know if I'm a fan. I don't really have TikTok anymore. But Wale, I had no idea who this was. And so basing it off that fact, I just feel like we need a little more time discussing it with other people and kind of doing our own sort of research before we can make a confident judgment on what to vote tonight.
Thank you. We will now move into the voting period. Please remember to power on your clickers. A is yes to adopt the motion to table this until the next Senate meeting on March 2nd. B is no and C is yes, and the voting is now open.
Waiting for a few more. With 24 in favor and 12 against, the motion passes.
With this motion, I would encourage senators to come and ask questions if they have questions over the next 2 weeks. Space was provided in the last couple weeks, and only a few of you came to ask questions. So if you still want to talk further about it, come and talk to us. We want to talk with you about it. We want to hear your ideas. So would like to encourage that as well.
All right, at this time, we're going to go ahead and move into Section 8, starting with Item 1. The advisor will read.
This is the first reading of SB-65-120, funding allocation for Delta Upsilon.
Is the author here and wish to speak? Floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. So Delta Upsilon, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that correctly. They are having a regional leadership academy, and they came to our committee, and their ultimate goal for requesting this funding was to send 6 members of their exec board to RLA, which stands for Regional Leadership Academy, to strengthen their leadership skills and ensure they have a successful start to their leadership terms. Each February, the Regional Leadership Academy serves as the fraternity's largest undergraduate educational program of the year. These Academies serve as a unique opportunity for chapter officers in a specific geographic region to attend sessions that span a wide range of topics affecting fraternity life. RLA is intentionally designed as an officer training platform to provide tangible skills needed for success as defined by the Delta Upsilon Officer Core competencies.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, we'll move into the debate period. Is there anybody who would like to speak in affirmation or negation at this time? Seeing none, we will move into the voting period. Please remember A is yes, B is no, C is abstain, and the voting is now open. What's the question? It's not a first read, it's a...
Just a couple more votes.
So what? It's one read, because it was already... Senator Lesnick, can we borrow you, please? Okay, we will take a recess until about 7:50, please. Please enjoy your time.
Senators, please take your seats.
At this time, we're going to go ahead and move to item 2 under section 8. Oh, JK. Advisor will give a vote at this time.
With 25 in favor, 7 against, and 2 abstentions, the motion passes.
At this time, we're going to move to item 2 under section 8. The advisor will read.
This is the first read of SB 65-121, funding allocation for, Adena Keem. Tor.
Is the author here and wish to speak? The floor is yours.
Hello again. So this is an industry engineering funding request. Hakeem came to our committee. He presented some facts about the conference. I'll just give you a brief description of the conference. The X conference is for rocket scientists and engineering majors. It lasts 3 days. It will feature guest speakers, workshops, and a job fair. Again, like I said, it's on industry, engineering, and management systems. And it provides a forum where engineering and management professionals can share and exchange their ideas in a professional yet relaxing and friendly environment. The conference will be held in Clearwater Beach, Florida, which sounds great to me. But other than that, I do not have anything else to add.
Before we move on, I would like to remind everybody what I said in my report and about the amounts that we have left and the number of funding requests we have left. And now I will invite the requester. I will yield my time for the requester. Hakeem, if you would like to come up and speak on your item.
I'm just waiting for the PowerPoint presentation. So. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Abdel Hakim Al-Turk, graduate student here at Wichita State. I am here to talk about something. I applied for a travel fund for the GA, and they were so nice, and they approved half of the amount, like 750 out of 1,500. So I'm here just to talk about this. Just a brief introduction about myself. I finished my master here at Wichita State Industrial Engineering, and I started my PhD program, and hopefully I will be able to graduate by the end of summer 2023, this summer, hopefully. So as I mentioned before, I will be presenting Wichita State in the IEMS conference in Clearwater, Florida. It's a 3 days conference, and as I mentioned before, the issue here is that I applied for 1,500, as the website says that now the new funding is 1,500, but I got approved only for 750. Here is the email showing the conversation. My problem is even 750 or even 1,500, it's not really enough. Here you can see in the table the cost for attending the conference. I already paid for the conference registration, which is 400, and I already bought for the flight 440. We already passed the 750 what the SGA approved for. We still have the accommodation. I'm not planning to stay in the same hotel, the ones that we have doing the conference. I'm just gonna go somewhere cheaper. The cheapest one I found is like $130 per night, which is like 1-star hotel. And I will be staying like 30 minutes away, so I do need a car. I'm not gonna pay. Clearwater is really expensive. Like the Uber there is like $65 one way. So the total what I'm actually gonna pay, it's gonna be more than 1,500. But since the maximum is 1,500, I just applied for 1,500. Also here, I went through the meeting of the SGA. I found that a lot of students applied for 1,500 and they got approved. Like first example, 1,200, second example, 1,500, and they are all domestic. Here we have also 1,400, and the last one is like 1,000. And as you can tell, they are all domestic travel, same as myself. Also, it's important to mention that I am not receiving any fund from the department. Here is the email showing from our department chair. I asked him for a fund. He said, we don't have money. So I asked the College of Engineering. They also said, we don't have money. I will be able to provide the email between me and the Dean of Engineering if you guys need it. But here is Dr. Krishna. He is our department chair, and this is what he replied to me when I asked for money. Not for money. I mean, I'm not gonna take it to myself. It is to represent Wichita State. Here is just a small screenshot what I paid. Registration for student is 400, which I already paid. I already paid for the flight, 440. The accommodation, as I told you before, I'm not gonna stay with the same hotel. I'm just wanna find somewhere cheaper, like 0-star or half-star, I don't care. And the cost gonna be for the accommodation around 550. I'm not gonna pay the 260 per night. And for this reason, I do need a car for transportation, which is around 230. So if we add these up, it's gonna be more than 1,500, but the maximum that we can request is 1,500. Just as a conclusion, I already spent 850, which is more than the 750 what I got approved for. I don't know, I really appreciate if you guys can help to at least to raise it a little bit from the 700. She just mentioned that there is no, like, a lot of money remain in the account. So probably 1,500.
Hakeem, can you speak
Probably
a little more into the
1,500 is not going to be something we can target, but I mean, if we can raise it a little bit from the 750, I already show you the numbers. I will really appreciate it. I do have to attend this conference because I am planning to represent Wichita State. Also, I'm planning to present my last publication, so I will be able, it's like a part of my dissertation, so I will be able to graduate in the end of summer. Just that's it. I made it short and sweet just to give you some numbers, and if you guys can help, thank you so much. And thank you also for the first approval, the initial approval for 700. I really appreciate that, but if we can do something more, it's gonna really help. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for either the authors or Hakeem? Yes, Senator Wassinger.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's for you, Olga. Okay, you're going on. Okay. So my question was just of the funds that we have left, how much is that taking into account, like this request, or just how much do we have left after today and after this request and the next one?
So the amount that I have given you today at $992 is the amount that we have with all the recommendations that we have made up until today. So my committee has met on Monday and we have made some recommendations from then. That includes that. So assuming that they will come to Senate and we still need to decide on that amount. So $992 is referring to that. I hope that answers your question.
Are there any other questions at this time? Yes, Senator Maldonado.
Sorry, do we have any idea of how much the other requests are going to be?
Yes, if you actually give me just a second, I can tell you exact amounts. So the exact amounts coming up are $731.80, $1,361.50, another $1,361.50, $262.23, $482, and those are the amounts that are requests that are coming up that I can see right now. And I will tell you right now that pretty much from all of the rest of our individual fund requests that are coming following are approved actually at the lesser amount that we have approved for Mr. Al-Turk, because we are very limited and we are very straightforward with the people when they try and come to us and present. We explain that we have limited funds and we ask them, what is the bare minimum you need to go? What is the bare minimum you need to be able to do this?
Thank you. Any other questions at this time? Senator Mallard.
So I'm a little confused. It says on the top line, out of the 1,500 funding requests, 750 was only approved. Are we voting to approve 750, or are we voting to approve another 1,500?
The bill as it stands right now is approving an allocation of $750 to Abdel Hakim Al-Turk.
Are there any other advisor?
For those of you who might be interested in increasing this, you have to make a formal motion on this. Still know that we're limited on funds. So at this point, just know that if you want to fully fund, we're then pulling out of a lot of other things.
Senator Panetto. Excuse me, Chairperson Panetto. I'm going to get used to saying that now.
So you said that you have paid for the registration already and for the hotel. Is that outside of the $750?
No, I paid for the registration and I paid for the flight. If you add these two together, it's like 850. I didn't get the 700 yet.
Okay.
I'm here asking if we can increase it a little bit, at least, so I can match some of these numbers.
Speaker, may I clarify also?
Yes.
And also just to remind everybody that individual and organizational funding that my committee in part oversees as well as the Senate does is a reimbursement process. So before Mr. Al-Turk can receive those funds, he will have to submit his receipts to us. So he has, until you guys approve this funding and until the president and the speaker sign it, those funds won't be available to him, and only then he can only get them after he submits the receipts.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we will move into the debate period. Is there anybody who would like to speak in affirmation or negation of the bill? And please remember, we are speaking on the bill, not on the presentation, unless a formal motion is said. Yes, Senator Balaji.
As part of the Finance Committee, Budget and Finance Committee, I would like to speak in negation because we have a lot more requests coming in, and we have seen a lot more requests come in above the amount of 1,500, and we're losing funds right now, and it's just February. We still have March, April, May, and June. So I'm not sure we could increase.
And just to clarify, you're speaking in negation of the bill or speaking in negation of increasing it?
Yeah, increasing it.
You're speaking in negation of increasing it. Okay. Thank you. And let's just remember to speak, we're speaking in affirmation or negation on the bill. So currently the bill states $750 being allocated to Mr. Alturk. Is there anybody who would like to speak during this debate period on that specific bill? Senator Wassinger.
Yeah, so I'll also be speaking in affirmation. I first want to thank the individual for coming and speaking to us in Senate. I know that this body can be rather intimidating, and I think you did a great job with your presentation. And I do really feel for you, and it truly is from the deepest part of me. I really wish that we could increase this, and if we had even a couple $100 more left in the tank, I would be the first one to suggest a motion to increase. But I just think that with the way that it is set up and with how little money we have, it would just be unwise for us to increase your budget, given that it might in turn make us ineligible to let anyone go to future events in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Senator Wassinger. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak during this debate period? Seeing none, we will move into the voting period. Please make sure your clickers are turned on. And remember, A is yes, B is no, and C is abstain. And the voting is now open. And please remember, we're voting on the bill of allocating $750 to Mr. Alturk. Did you get here?
With 34 in favor, 1 against, and 1 abstention, the motion passes.
And thank you, Mr. Alturk, for the presentation. At this time, we will move to item 3. Under Section 8, the advisor will read.
This is the first read of Senate Bill 65-122, funding allocation for Maya Eldani.
All right, is the author here and wish to speak?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Natasha, and I'm an honors senator. So Maya Eldani came to us last Monday for an individual funding request. She's a grad student who is hoping to attend the American Chemical Society Conference in Indiana from March 25th through the 30th. She will be presenting her research and representing Wichita State and the biology and chemistry department very well. And it's also going to be a really good opportunity for her to network and advance her professional career. And I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you for that. And we will move into the debate period. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in affirmation or negation of this bill? Seeing none, we'll move into the voting period. Please remember, A is yes, B is no, and C is abstain.
With 28 in favor, 4 against, and 4 abstentions, the bill passes.
All right. At this time, we're going to move to item 4 under Section 8. The advisor will read.
This is the first read of Senate Bill 65-123, recognition of Artists Exploration Association.
Is the author here and wish to speak? The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm not really the author of this bill, but Chairperson Harmon could not be here tonight, so I'm going to be speaking in replacement of him. But this student organization came and spoke to our committee last week, and we passed them unanimously. They also met one-on-one with Chairperson Harmon. They meet all the requirements to be an RSO, and I yield the floor to the organization.
The floor is yours. If the nominee, okay, yep.
How do I turn this off?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dao Tain, and I'm here to seek recognition for Artist Exploration Association. So just like what the name suggests, we'll essentially be kind of like an art club that will promote opportunities to create and explore visual arts. Some activities I have in mind, for example, would be to host a collaborative art exhibition with other members, or even maybe creating art on campus. But overall, I'm open to any suggestions and wants that other members might have. So I'm sure there will be a variety of different things that we'll be doing in the future. Currently, the only visual arts organization that WSU have is the Digital Arts Club, which is a very niche field of art. But what I have in mind is a group that's more inclusive and more open to any students, regardless of the type of art that they are interested in. So that's why I'm here, to seek recognition. Do anyone have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, thank you again for your speech. And Speaker Pro Tem Williams.
Since Chairperson Harmon is not here, in his spirit and he's not dead, but in his spirit, I move to suspend the rules to move into a second read and vote.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, second from Senator Warden. At this time, we'll go ahead and move into the voting period to suspend the rules. A is yes to suspend the rules, B is no, and C is abstain, and the voting is now open.
Waiting on one more person. With 32 in favor, 1 against, and 3 abstentions, the motion passes.
So at this time, because the rules have been suspended, we're moving to the debate period. Is there anybody who would like to speak in debate? Senator Warden?
Sorry you guys got to hear me so much tonight. Being the one of 2 fine arts senators, I always am going to be voting for my arts. There are multiple things on campus that are art related, maybe not RSOs, but we have Printmaking Guild, Ceramics Guild, we have the Tornado Alley Press. So having an artist exploration thing is definitely opens those that may not be in the art field who are willing to learn more, say art history, the processes of different arts. I think it's a really good idea to kind of get this going. And for those that may really enjoy art but not major in it, I think it's a really good thing to get them into. So please vote yes.
Senator Howard?
In a spirit of Chairperson Harmon, I move to approve this bill by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Seeing none, congratulations, you have been approved. All right, and now moving to our last item in Section 8. Item 5 under Section 8, the advisor will read.
This is the first read of AR 65-014, prioritization of funding and student fees.
Is the author here? The floor is yours.
So good evening, everyone. So what this resolution will do is to formally ask the Student Fees Commission to prioritize student services in the student fees process. Although we don't control directly how student fees are allocated, and that's up to discretion of the Student Fees Commission, we are the representatives of the student body, and as such, our priorities should be considered in that process. That being said, we ought to seek out areas where we can see measurable impact on the student experience and student retention and support those initiatives. For instance, with the ODI, students who have been engaging in the ODI have GPAs above a 3.0, which is quite good, honestly, for college. And also, certain programs in the ODI, like Passage to Success, when students engage with those programs, they have a higher retention rate. 80% of students who engage with those programs stay on to the second year, as compared to the 69% of students who do not engage with those programs. Furthermore, we, at the end of the day, are in the business of higher education, and we should support students in their academic success. To that end, examples include emergency funding for care team. When students cars break down and finances are tight, they can't get to school, they miss classes, and thus academics drops. So that is also another area that funding could already be used. Another example is scholarships. To that end, I was talking to Director Kaiser a couple weeks ago, and she mentioned how in her office, she only had, I believe it was $143 for scholarships last year. And of that, she had over 30 applicants. So when we see these areas where we can make a real impact, I think we should put our money where our mouth is and do something. So to that end, does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time? Seeing no questions, thank you. Without objection, this legislation will be sent to the Budget and Finance Committee. Are there any objections at this time? Seeing no objections, Senator Liu, I do encourage you to attend Budget and Finance next week at 5:30 for any follow-up.
At 6 p.m., I'm sorry.
6 p.m., thank you, for any follow-up questions and or amendments to this. At this time, we will now move to Section 9, Committee of the Whole, and I do hereby resolve to move into the Committee of the Whole to discuss ADA compliance as well as the RSC expansion plan. At this time, we'll move to item 1. Please, for new senators, please remember that within Committee of the Whole, conversations are a little bit more laxed and informal. You can address people by their first names. I am Junior, not Gregory. And under item 1 of Section 9, we will now hear from Isabel Medina Kaiser as well as Chrissy McGee for ADA compliance.
There we go. Alrighty. Hi, everyone. And since it's first names only right now, actually, you can call me IMK. That's what I go by. So yeah, it's not like Cher, it's not like Madonna, it's just IMK. So I wanted to just thank you for inviting me to be here at your Senate meeting. It's giving me some good flashbacks because I used to be on student government when I was in college a few moons ago. But it's wonderful work. Keep going. I'm looking at all the movers and shakers that are going to be coming up in the future and people that are going to be, I know, a senator at some point in time. Yes, I hope. And again, I just wanted to thank you again. So we're just going to go into the information, and I'm going to go really fast because I had some coffee. So yeah, okay, here we go. Make sure I can be heard. So basically, there's about 26% of adults in the United States that will have some type of a disability. Know that that number keeps growing. I think this number was actually from last year, so it may have actually increased. Know that it's the largest minority and that anyone can join this at any point in time in their life. You could be walking down the sidewalk, not this sidewalk because we're working on them, but it could be that, you know, walking down a sidewalk, you trip, hit your head, you have a brain injury. Could be that you go to your medical doctor, find out you have diabetes too. Or it could be with my own self, when I was in high school, my words would flip around when I would read and things like that. And then they tried to say it was because I spoke Spanish or my family spoke Spanish. But no, it was because I was dyslexic. So it's those kinds of things. And that's one of the things that we're seeing with a lot of our students coming through is that they're not knowing that they have a disability or they're not knowing that there's a learning disability that's going on until they start reading a bunch of books. Like in high school, you may have had only 3 chapters to read for 1 week. In college, that's 3 chapters for 3 books for 1 class. So again, some of those issues are kicking up for a lot of our students. So this is a civil rights issue. A lot of people don't realize that. And basically, it's civil rights legislation that passed in 1990 with some 2010 amendments. And basically, a person who is disabled is an individual who has a physical, mental impairment that limits a major life activity, has a record of such a disability, or is regarded as having a disability. And the life activities are not limited to learning, working, walking, hearing, breathing, and seeing. Other physical, sensory functions also qualifies that person as disabled. Know that accommodations would be placed in for that to meet that student's specific needs. So who determines this? Basically, it's our office. We're under Student Affairs. And so one of the things that we need is documentation of the disability. Again, that could be an evaluation, a 504, it could be your IEP, it could be a new evaluation that you get through CAPS, it could be, one of the concerns that I have is learning evaluations for learning disabilities is extremely expensive. Could be up to $2,000. It could be a whole year before you can get even evaluated. So what we've been doing is using the psych clinic on campus for them to be able to at least do the evaluation, and we can look at the rates and the information and go from there for documentation. We are not an office that's going to sit there and go, oh, sorry, you don't have documentation. We're going to try to find ways to figure that out, because you know that something's not right. You know what you know. So again, the purpose of these accommodations is to provide equal access to programs and services while preserving academic standards. So this is our QR code to go right into our application. You're welcome to take a picture of this if you want to. I know that you received this PowerPoint, so you have it. We're using a new program called AIM, and AIM is just, we're still kind of working all the little bugs out, so if you're using it, know that we're still working on it. But it basically allows you as a student to look at what accommodations you want for each classroom, because you may want, let's say you already received extra time for tests, but maybe this is a class where you just want to use to be able to record a class. Know that we have smart pens that we provide to our students that they can check out for the semester, and then they check them back in. Do know with our office, we cannot charge our students for anything. The only thing that we can charge them for is if they don't return their smart pen back to us. But again, we don't charge, so that's by law. We can't do that. But the smart pen records the class, but it also records what you're writing. In fact, your monies that you gave us, $6,666, which is weird that it all came out that way, was the cost for our new pens that we purchased with the money that you have provided to us. So again, smart pens are wonderful. So to register for formal accommodations, again, you go to our website, download your documentation. We set up a meeting to talk to you about your disability and how your disability affects not just your academics, but is there a concern for housing? Is there issues that might be kicking up with practicums, clinicals, those kinds of things? After submitting all that, like I said, we do the intake, and then once we have done that process, then again, accommodation letters will be sent out to your professors. Again, I know there's a lot of questions that might be coming up afterwards, and I'll address some of those questions about the whole awareness on our campus as far as disabilities is concerned. Once the letters are sent out, then the student needs to contact that professor. Things are a little different in college. In K through 12, you had the IDEA, you had 504s, which basically a lot of parents and yourself kind of advocated for yourself, but in college, it's all you. You're in the driver's seat. So that's the biggest difference between the three different laws. Every semester, if you are using accommodations and you're needing them again for the next semester, you need to do a continued service. We don't need new documentation unless something has changed or your medication has changed or something to that effect. So that way we can send your accommodation letters out again. This information is confidential. A lot of my students tell me they're afraid to come into our office because they think that their degree is going to say degree in engineering with accommodations. It's not. It will not. Again, this is confidential information. The only time that I can say anything is if there's an investigation of some sort. But again, this is confidential. Your accommodation letters does not state what your disability is. That's up to you if you choose to divulge that. So again, confidentiality, most important. There are learning disabilities out there. There's 17 main types, but only 5 main issues. It's how you take information through your senses. How do you figure out that information means? How do you put it in the right little memory box? How do you pull it out of the right memory box? And how do you use what you learned? These are some of the disabilities as far as learning disabilities that come through our office. It could be anything from dyscalculia, which is a disorder of math. It does come up. It's kind of hard to find documentation on it, but it definitely comes up for a lot of our students. It could be dysgraphia, just like it sounds, issues as far as writing or pulling information from your here onto paper. It could be things like short-term memory issues. Some of our students are dealing with medical issues. It could be anything from temporary stuff, arm and foot injuries. It could be cancer, celiac, cerebral palsy, diabetes, hand and arm amputations, migraines, MS, MD, quadriplegia. So again, these are things that would be considered a medical issue as far as diagnosis. Know that for a lot of our students, I have one student who actually has 9 different diagnoses. And again, just dealing with different things. So it could be, actually, I think 496 of our students have at least 2 disabilities. So just wanted to touch on that. One of the areas that's really kicking up, which you all know because of the psychological stuff that's kicking up with COVID, with life, with shootings, all of that, and just some of the stuff that happens in families. So it could be ADHD, it could be anxiety disorder, autism spectrum. We've actually had an increase, I believe it's of 268% more students with ASD or autism. And so we had 19 last year, we have 72 this year. And again, that is something that keeps climbing as far as the different diagnoses. It could be post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, you name it, we have it. Could be hearing, it could be hard of hearing, speech disorders, vision disabilities. Whoops. Woo! I benched. Okay, there we go. So testing accommodations, it could be extra time on testing. Know that testing services has merged with our office, so I'm the director and Kim is the coordinator. And so we're trying to save money by doing that, since most of the tests that are being held at testing services are accommodated testing. So it could also be that you could use a computer, use of a calculator, flexibility with exam and due dates. That's typically more for our students with medical issues. Again, accommodated testing is done through WSU Testing Services. Again, with WSU Testing Services, as a student, it is your job to set the tests there. It's your job to contact with your professor. I've said this before to my students. Again, you are in the driver's seat, but you need to communicate with me. If you are not receiving your accommodations, you need to let me know so Mama Bear can come out, okay? I used to be a probation officer, so when my voice drops down to this level, then you gotta, yeah. People know to run away when that does that. But again, I need to know, so communication is so important. Classroom accommodations could be note-taking. We're really, again, pushing for our students to be independent and using the assistive technology that is out there for them. So that's, again, why we're pushing the smart pens. Could be dietary accommodations. It could be emotional support animals and housing. It just depends. One of the biggie that we're working on is emergency evacuation. It's one of the things we need to think about. We are in Tornado Alley, so it's something that we need to think. Could be accommodations, as I said before, practicums, internships, and clinicals. We get involved in those. I want my students to know that accommodations is from the cradle to the grave, okay? It doesn't just, start in, K through 12 and then go bye-bye. And some of our students are being told that in high school, that they're not going to get accommodations. This is for high school. It's for your bachelor's, your master's, your doctorate. It's for workplace. We had 40 of our students graduate last semester. Yes. One had a doctorate, and I think 3/4 of them were masters. So, hey. Yeah, I get a little excited about that. I'll bring it down. This is a really great website if you're wanting to know what kind of accommodations you can get within the job area. It's very important that you utilize your accommodations as early as you can. We are located at Grace Wilkie Hall, room 203. Yes, I know it doesn't make any sense to have a disability program on the second floor. It's pretty typical. But hey, when we're moving into Clinton Hall, or now Student Services, we are going to be on a floor that has an elevator and an entrance. I fought for that. So anyway, yeah, I push things. Anyway, did you want to do questions now?
Thank you. Are there any questions at this time or comments for Isabel? Yes, Senator Balaji.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I really appreciate the way you put out all the features of disability services and how the confidential information is being accessed. I just want to ask if the way you told us so elaborately, are we doing this in like places where we have orientations or things like that?
Okay. I believe it's on. So yes, we provide, we go to all of the road shows. So we get a hold of the students even when they're thinking about coming to college. We do a lot of awareness tables. We're going to be part of your wellness program that you're going to be doing in a couple of weeks. Yay! And so, yeah, we try to get the word out there. It's actually part of the law that you need to get information out there so students know what's available. So we try to get as to anybody and everybody that asks us to come in and do a presentation, I am there. And like I said, I can do it in a 15-minute type of thing. But yeah, we try to really get that information out. It's very important for our students to know that this is available, especially when you've had high schools tell you, oh, you're not going to get your accommodations. Did that answer your question? You got more?
Before I come to you, AJ?
Hi. Thanks for the presentation. I just wanted to know, because the school pushes like presentations like these, what can we as I guess representatives of the student body, what can we do to help ODS in marketing itself well to the wider student population? To those who might not have had the programs at their orientation, like me, because I didn't have that. So what can we do to help spread the message?
Just give our information out, let students know. The most important thing is making sure that you are referring the student. If you're referring the student, that makes me feel so wonderful because I know that you feel that the program is good and will help, especially if you're a student who is registered with our office. The other thing is just making sure the information is out there. I had talked to Senator Liu a little bit about this the other day. Making sure that it is encouraged for professors and faculty and staff to come to our trainings or invite us to trainings. We'll be doing a Ability Ally training March 7th at 11:30 in RSC. I don't know the location right this off the top of my brain, but just encouraging people to follow through and connect, and making sure our staff, faculty are aware of accommodations in the process, and that it's not just us having this big, huge heart. There's also a reason for it, legality. We kind of ride this fence. We are here for the college to make sure that they stay out of any kind of trouble with the ADA, but we're also here for the students. So that's kind of, again, the focus, is that this is something we have to do. It's not a choice.
So is training not mandatory for faculty or staff?
Well, I know it's under the diversity training that's available, and they do consider that counted for, but I just really want to have more of a push on, I know we talk about diversity, but a lot of times we don't talk about disabilities, and it's all in the same.
Thank you. Mana?
You did mention that you would be willing to come and do a presentation for kids outside, or like just marketing in general. Would you be willing to come and talk to the engineering kids once?
Oh, yeah, certainly. I know I come in and talk to, I think it's the program for students that are minority students coming in for engineering. I can't remember the lady's name, but I'm usually there every orientation. But yeah, just I have business cards in the back. I'm going to put them back there, and y'all pick them up, and I can come in and do whatever presentation you want. I also do one on disability etiquette, which is a lot of things that a lot of people don't seem to understand. If they understand and they're comfortable, then they're not going to be so nervous.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Are there any, AJ?
And I know that you mentioned stuff about like ADA compliance issues. Just for like the student body like watching, and those of us in here who maybe don't know, how do we go about reporting those issues? Because I know that I've encountered some like compliance issues with like especially heavy doors in some of the older buildings, and some of those the buttons on the doors that made them automatically open, some of those don't work. So where would we go to report those?
And actually, I'm going to have Chrissy address this issue. Chrissy is well, I wouldn't say new. We've been here about a year now. 1 year. I used to be the ADA coordinator. Now she has the job, and I'm going to let her address that. Would you like?
All right, so I'm Chrissy. I'm with the Office of Institutional Equity and Compliance, the ADA 504 coordinator. Where you can get to the form to report any barriers or deficiencies is on the bottom of every one of our web pages. It doesn't matter which page you're on. At the very bottom, it says accessibility. If you click on that and then scroll to the bottom of the page you go to, it's a form that tells you, you just fill it out. It's like 3 boxes, I think, and hit submit, and then that comes straight to me and also John Jones, who does digital accessibility.
Yes.
Chrissy, and I know there's been, in this space, there's been some questions, but I think in outside spaces, can you kind of talk them through what that process looks like? Once a report is made, what happens next? Either through OIAC or other spaces, can you kind of maybe walk them through what that process for the university looks like?
Right, so reporting something physical is the way I just told you. If it's reporting something that's investigated, that's like discrimination, that's a different form on the OIAC website, so I want to make sure that's clear. But for reporting barriers, if I get a note or a form or even an email from somebody or a phone call, we try to respond with a solution within 2 business days. Mostly because if it's like moving big furniture that I can't go move myself, facilities has to get a ticket put in for them to schedule it to be moved. But other than that, myself and everybody in my office, we're required to watch our emails over the weekend. we watch it at all times in case we do get a discrimination complaint. So we want to be quick to respond to those, at least outreach and get things started.
And outside of the questions that you've been asked, did you have any additional information that you wanted to share, or?
Yeah, sure. So I did put some stuff together to hand out to you guys. But I think the big thing you need to be aware of, and students need to be aware of, is, oh, great, thanks, is that my coming on board was part of an initiative to get a transition plan going for Wichita State. And a transition plan requires a self-evaluation or audit to be done of all of our rented and owned buildings across campus, as well as our satellite sites. So that audit began. We got proposals for it last spring, and then we ended up going with internally to do the self-evaluation internally, buying software and then designating somebody to be in charge of getting that audit done, so it would be done in a timely manner. It's scheduled to be done in August of this year. A big part of it should be done the end of this month or beginning of March, but dorms, things that can't be done until students are out of school, will not be completed until early summer. But it is ahead of schedule. So that audit then will give us a list of deficiencies. So I kind of typed out what a transition plan is. It also came from the 1990 Civil Rights Law. But with this law, we're required by law to identify physical barriers across campus. And that includes physical, includes digital, barriers within the classroom. One of the things that I think is really increasing is large individuals can't sit in some of our desks or some of the chairs that have arms on them. So that's becoming a big one that we're having to do to get, other new furniture for. And we want to get it to where it's inclusive and that person doesn't have to ask for an accommodation or a special lab chair to sit in, but that we do have those options in each of our classrooms. So that's what we're striving for. The transition plan, okay, so going back to that, once we get that audit done, that self-evaluation, there is a group of us, an internal compliance team. Eventually, we'll have faculty and students, a couple from, I think we decided 2 from each, that would join our team. And we'll be getting that going when we start voting on taking the information from the audit and we start going through the information and deciding what projects need to be done first, which are the most critical, which projects are bigger, and we might have to push down the road for funding. Say it's a $20,000 project or $40,000, and we know, that's going to be on our 10-year plan. So student and faculty will be part of that. Another part of the law with the transition plan is to make sure that we do put it out there and the public, visitors, students, faculty, employees, everybody has their time to know where to submit suggestions to. And so that's something that we're really going to push with the Shocker Blast, and we're going to have a QR code put up that we can put around different buildings that students will see, to try and encourage them to give us suggestions. And then we're also going to take it to the Wichita-Sedgwick County Access Advisory Board. They're made up of several different organizations across our community that deal with people that have disabilities. So we're trying to get as much input as we can. But it's been a slow process. Once the audit's done and we start voting and we start getting things going, we'll start building that on our website. Now, once we have a timeline for our modifications, then all of that will be posted and published so that anybody can access it, anybody visiting our campus. They can access it at any time. If they find a barrier and they get on and they look at the building they're in and they pull up the report and we haven't identified it, then we want to know so we can get it on the report and figure it out when we can get that barrier completed. As far as doors, the weight of doors, sometimes the automatic openers will kind of pull, especially in the winter. When the heat starts coming on, the HVAC system somehow puts too much pressure on the doors, so they need to be adjusted. And there's no way really to know that ahead of time. It's just something that ends up coming to me in a report. And so then facilities, they are very timely in getting out to the doors and the openers that don't work. So again, if you can get out to students, any of those kind of issues, shoot an email or get on that accessibility tab and submit a form. Am I missing anything with the ADA?
Thank you. Trinity, you had a question? You're fine.
Sorry, there's a mild delay on the closed captions. Something that many in this body have heard me talk about, and that I would like to have a question about is within that is something that is being evaluated, the visual fire alarms being placed into the suites and the flats. I am in understanding that there are some communication compliant rooms in the suites and the flats, but they are not all. Personally, I feel like that limits a lot of people, including myself and the others in my community, attending Wichita State and who we can room with. My roommate currently knows sign language, and so moving into a communication compliant room in the middle of the spring semester is difficult to evaluate that I won't be able to communicate with my other roommates as effectively.
So you're talking about the emergency, the
Yes.
fire alarms that light up?
Yes.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, with the audit, we can't get into the student housing and do our audit for that until spring semester is over. So I can't speak specifically for how that's set up yet because I haven't been over there with John. John Minahan with facilities is in charge of that technology. But one of the big things that we have on our audit list is making sure visual and audible alarms are everywhere that they should be. That you're not in the bathroom and you can't see the thing flashing because the stall is over here and the alarm's over there. Those are the kinds of things we're looking at and hopefully going to be able to get fixed. As far as the dorms with ADA compliant rooms, there's a certain percentage of those that will need to be ADA compliant, and then the way we deal with those is it'll go through the ODS office, and we'll get a notice. My office will then get a notice from Isabel letting me know that, hey, we have this individual that's going to need a compliant room. I'll get the gist of what the accommodation is. I don't get information from ODS as far as what their diagnosis is or anything like that. I just get what the need is. And then I work with facilities or Katie Austin and housing to get those going.
Thank you.
This is a little bit more of a bolder question, and please answer as specifically as you deem to do so. But I was reading what WSU is doing currently to address accessibility and inclusion within the campus. Would you, either one of you, say that you feel as if accessibility as well as just awareness is a priority for Wichita State currently?
I think not just accessibility, but inclusion, hand in hand. Again, I was hired at the end of January last year for this effort, and it is a top priority with the President's office. So hopefully there will be a lot of awareness about this before the end of this year even.
Thank you. Are there any other thoughts, questions, comments for these two lovely individuals? Yes, Senator Mallard.
Will you be up for questions afterwards? Because I know a lot of us have like personal ADA stuff that we might want to ask and not just bother everyone else with.
Sure, sure.
Is there anybody else who, Annie?
Yeah, so first off, thank you both for being here. Second of all, with all of the construction that's going on and kind of the inevitable, there's always going to be construction on a college campus. What avenues do you guys kind of take to reach out to students with mobility issues or students who are blind to just make sure that if their path has been compromised, they will still be able to get to their classes?
Okay, we're on. So for the students that are registered with our office, for the whole fence that was put up, we explained where it was to make sure that, you know, that was one of my biggest concerns was how was that going to influence people getting around and, you know, making sure that they know where their orientation is the most important part. And making sure that they were aware of it. We let them know as soon as we found out that there was going to be a fence, and they let us know where the location of the fence was. So we reached out to the ones that are registered with us. Now understand something. A student doesn't have to be registered with our office. You know, if they choose not to and they have a mobility issue, they just are wanting the campus to be accessible. So again, with the students that we have contact with, we try to keep them informed, and especially things like elevators going out, like McKinley. When that went out, I was contacting my students to say, hey, you know, do we need to move your class? We do a lot of moving of classes, a lot of moving of furniture. So just making sure that they are prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final thoughts, questions, comments?
I wanted to add one more thing. So one of the things I'm probably more excited about than anything is the interactive map that we have online. It's not very much, it's not promoted really. So we're gonna make some changes with that. And one of the things is going to be direct routes of travel. We're going to identify the new handicap parking because we're going to restripe some parking this summer and change where some of the handicap parking is laid out right now because it's not in the direct route of travel to some of the buildings. But you'll be able to click on the interactive map and light it up what is the best and quickest way for you to get there. And then another thing that we talked about was that they would be able to click where they are in one classroom, in one building, and where they're going, and that it would be able to give them the quickest and best route to get there. It'll identify the handicap accessible doorways and the accessible pathways. So that's something really exciting to look forward to.
So, and it usually doesn't happen, but last fiscal year we had a little bit of money left from ODS, and so we purchased about 20 wheelchairs for the campus to be able to use because we want to make sure that if we have a visitor that they're able to get around the campus. We also purchased 2 evac chairs. We did not have evac chairs that would actually help a student go from 3rd floor down to the 1st floor. And that was one of those things that was keeping me awake at night. And so we got them, and now they are located in housing, which makes sense because that's where they should be. And we're hoping to see what we can do about getting more evac chairs. They're specialized chairs that kind of do like almost a tractor type of thing going down steps. Again, just making sure that safety is on the top. And making sure that a student can choose to go to the 3rd floor if they choose to, you know?
Awesome. Well, Isabel and Chrissy, on behalf of myself and the legislative branch, we just want to say thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules late at night to come do this presentation. I do know a few senators do possibly have questions, and you do have you said your business cards that you offer as well, so.
And there's a pen on each one of your areas that I gave you. It has our phone number on there, so, and they're nice pens, they're the thick ones.
Yeah. Awesome. Again, thank you again, and let's give them a round of applause, please. Thank you both. At this time, we're going to go ahead and move into item 2 under section 9, the RSC expansion plan with Advisor Fonseca.
Hey! Hi! Thank you, Jade. Always could count on you. All right, well, I am excited to share with you all kind of the project that we have been spending the past 2 years talking about in various spaces, and I'm excited to kind of share with you all some first-time images that I think is the first time we've shared with a larger group of students, and then kind of talk to you a little bit about why we're doing this. So this building, right now, Radigan Student Center, when it was, I think a couple of years ago, or the last renovation, there was always an intention to do another phase of renovation when the last bond would come up. A part of the student fees package is a bond that was established in 2012. I don't know, I'm looking at David, but he was here. So 2010, 2012, sorry, this is David, not David Liu. That 2010, fall 2010, that your predecessors adopted and put into the student fees package that pays off the renovation for this building. This PowerPoint does not do that, it's this one. So a little bit about what we are, we're looking at. Couple of things. So with the current renovation happening to Clinton Hall, to the new Student Success Center, it gives us a lot of opportunity to really kind of think about how are we activating the space from the library, Student Success Center, and then this building. So a couple of things that we're looking at is where we can consolidate support services in space, as well as a brand new home for what we are calling the Center for Diversity and Inclusion. If you stepped into the ODI office right now, it's fairly small. And so the renovation that we are looking at is super exciting. We are looking at building a 2-story center for diversity and inclusion, and I'll kind of show you a little bit about what that looks like. We're also working on some minor renovations. I have it here. I don't know why I'm not looking at that. That will also integrate a couple new additions, both out into the parking lot and back where the Human Resources building and the CAC Theater is. So if you saw the story that was posted on the Sunflower, we are demolishing those 2 buildings and we're going to build out and up, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like as well. As well as some construction to the third floor, some renovation to the 3rd floor. Big thing that we keep talking about in these meetings and these conversations, the minute the last renovation was done, we already outgrew it. And so the hope what we're doing this time is that we're not going to outgrow the space so fast with the new students and enrollment and things like that. We are adding about 50,000 square feet and renovating about 20,000 square feet to this building. There are some images that I'll show you, but I'm going to walk you through some of the other pieces that we're doing. Right, I think you all know the Radigan Student Centers is the community center for Wichita State, serves students, faculty, staff, alum, and the community. Project goals that we are looking at is creating a new identifiable center to celebrate and support diversity and inclusion initiatives. We're providing added space to support the work of student organizations and student government, improving the availability of large and small meeting rooms, responding to the needs of students, talking about 24-hour space and study space that is larger than what is currently right now in the Abala Library. I keep saying that wrong, but more 24-hour space, providing a facility that's responsive to evolving needs, and then considering to look at improvement to the direct access to the Shocker store on the 1st floor as well. We're adding a brand new large event meeting space that is divisible into 2 smaller spaces to be planned on the 3rd floor. So not the same size as this, but similar to this size, similar to the ballroom upstairs. A new meeting space to facilitate student senate meetings, as well as that same space being flexible to use for other kind of events right outside of the student government's office suite, and I'll show you that a little bit. Like I mentioned, a brand new Center for Diversity and Inclusion in front of the RSC that is featured with 2 stories and new flexible spaces for students, and 24-hour space, study space, collaboration space on the 1st floor when the main building is closed. We're also doing some renovations to the SGA office, renovations to a student affairs suite and to the SEAL suite, with dealing with changes to the new Center of Diversity and Inclusion and trying to make it a little bit more accommodating for the expansions that are happening in all of those areas as well. We are also moving Shocker Printing, which is currently located in the Marcus Welcome Center. Wow. In Morrison Hall, to the building as well as the post office, in hopes that both of these will be expanding to better serve the university and community and students. And of course, building support, right? Anytime you add more space, you also have to make sure that you can support that space. So for these, more restrooms, drinking fountains, closets, communication closets, HVAC, electrical rooms, as well as wellness rooms and single-user restrooms in the building. So, construction takes a long time. So I learned. I thought, like, oh, we can have this tomorrow. That's not how that works. I'm kidding. So this, you can't really tell, the screen is not that well where you can see it, but we'll drop it in the team so you can go from there. But this will be about a 48-month build when we start. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, or talk about that timeline in just a little bit. But it will take a second. So reality, most of you, unless you are going to be here for a master's degree or a doctorate, won't see the expansion to the building. However, we'll start seeing some action happening when the renovation to Clinton Hall is done, because we also don't want to do 2 renovations at the same time and disrupt the services of these areas. So when that building is done, then the next building continues. The other reality is we can't renovate this building on a bond until the current bond is paid off. And so we'll talk about that as well. So this kind of just sends the timeline, a bunch of fancy words on the side that make a lot of sense to people, and I will explain those if you have questions, but we'll drop that in there again. If you have any specific things, I'm happy to answer those too. Mentioned we are going to be doing some demolition. So we are taking down the CAC Theater. So if everybody know what that is behind the building is not very ADA accessible, so that is coming down. As well as the HR Center to make space for the new additions that we're adding to that space. So those are the 2 buildings that are going to be coming down a part of this renovation. Can't see that well, but so coming into the parking lot where we currently are, there will be where we are placing the new Center for Diversity and Inclusion. And then on the side towards, again, where the CAC Theater is, and the HR building is where the new addition from there, 3 stories there. The new Center for Diversity and Inclusion will be 2 stories. I'm trying to convince them to put a bridge between the parking lot to the 3rd floor, and I haven't been told no yet. Oh, I know, right? Listen, don't get me started. Okay, so you can kind of see some ideas. So this is 1st floor. There will be an entrance into the Center for Diversity and Inclusion from the outside, as well as an entrance to the building so where the current entrance on the 1st floor is now on the parking lot. Part of that will still exist, but we'll have to redo that space in order to accommodate the building. So you can kind of see where Brandon's head is blocking. The yellow is the current space. So you'll just kind of see we'll do some reconfiguration for that. But that will be the 1st floor, again, accessible from the outside. On the other side, Shocker Printing and the post office will take up some space there, as well as a 24-hour study and collaboration space. The super cool thing about the red part is when the building is closed, that part is not. So what we're looking at is you'll be able to scan your ID and you'll be able to access that building. There'll be some food things in there, so you'll still be able to utilize it if you're here at 2 a.m. in the morning studying for exams or whatever you're doing. There will be spaces in there that are small private rooms, but also some large collaboration space and medium-sized rooms for students to utilize for study groups and stuff like that when you're studying so you can all graduate, right? Yes, okay. So 2nd floor, if you are that end of the building, the 2nd floor of the Center for Diversity and Inclusion, right now we are testing an idea of putting a hallway. If you've been in the SEAL office, you're thinking, how are you going to do that? The idea right now is to carve a hallway through my office. See how that works. And some parts of SGA as well to make room for that hallway. We're still testing out some visual ideas of how that's going to look like. But we're doing some light renovation to the SEAL office to accommodate that. Centralizing all of the student affairs offices that are scattered throughout the building and all the other places on campus into a space. So where the old ODI office is, everybody know where we are now? That would be converted into a student affairs suite. So centralizing all of those offices into that space. Across the hall from ODI right now, where Alicia Newell and where Dr. Austin's office were, would be absorbed by the student government because we're going to be losing some space in the suite. So absorbing that space to provide some more spaces, and they're going to merge those two rooms together instead of having that weird hallway between it. If you go down the hallway, what would take you out to the stairs, you'll enter into the second floor of the new addition. There's also going to be some more study collaboration space, not 24-hour space, but just more space, so more meeting rooms, small, medium, and large spaces as well, and open spaces, so it's not just all rooms, but some open spaces as well. Down the hallway on the other side, again, we're calling it the Student Senate room, but that's not where we're going to end up calling it. That will be the new space where Senate can have meetings, but it will also be a tiered room. So if we're showing movies or we're having lectures or whatever, that it would be a tiered space where it's set for Senate to have meetings every single week, but also throughout the week when we're not in session, that other organizations and students groups can use it for new member presentations, for our fraternities and sororities, for events that are being held by our student organizations. Lots of flexible using space in there in a more tiered structure instead of a flat thing as well. So to try and make a new space that may be usable for what we would lose with the theater coming down. And then the third space, or third floor, current ballroom, but then you'll see a brand new, wonderful, large meeting space that we can divide into several different sections, doing some light renovation to the ballroom, especially for the divider to fix and address that. That's where I'm trying to get them to make a hallway. Wouldn't that be so cool? Maybe that's just me, but then that would be all that we would have on that space there. So some pictures, what that might look like. So mentioned, I can't move, but the new Center for Diversity and Inclusion, the 2 floors right here, all windows, really nice, really cute, super cool. And then on the back end, the connection of the first, second, and third floor where, again, the CAC and HR would be what it used to be. Front side of what it would look like at night. I know, right? From the side. So you might talk about where the current entrance is, redoing some spaces there to still allow for some entrance into that part too. Now, the fun part. Here is what is exciting. Huh? Oh, there's no night picture of that one. That's the only night picture. But here is what is exciting. Well, not yet. The cost of this construction is expensive. But here is what is exciting. You're telling me, you're looking at it, you're like, Gabriel, how is that possible? Let me tell you this. The current fee we charge will cover the cost of this renovation, so we will not have to increase fees in order to pay for this renovation at this moment. Now, let me explain a couple things. Bonding happens, economy changes, things like that. We have projected for, by the time we get ready to renovate this, we have projected for that 4-year preparation. So it's like a percentage that we build into the budget. And with that number, with the cost of where we are right now and what cost came back from Woolsey when that was done and where we currently are with Clinton, at this point, students should not expect an increase to their student fee. With the number we have currently, the adjusted number from last year, should cover the entire cost of the renovation for the lifetime of the bond. Bonds are 30 years. I don't know what that means, but 30 years. But it should cover the entire cost of what that is. This won't actually go up for a vote until next year. So I'm just sharing this with you all now because this is good information, especially as the Regents today just approved our master plan adjustment. So they did approve that. But just because they approved that doesn't mean we're actually going to do it, right? There's still lots of different factors that go into determining whether or not we actually move forward with some of these things. The other piece that's also still reality from this, right? Some of those opportunities are name opportunities for people to donate and contribute to, which also saves money on the back end from student fees as well. So to me, I think that is super cool. We have approached this entire project. If you all know, if you were here last year, Ridja Khan, our former student body president, was very adamant that we did this without increasing fees in any capacity. And we were able to do that right now without having, and we have some wiggle room in there still, that if we make some changes, that we still are confident and that we won't have to make an adjustment to the fee that currently exists there. Making sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to talk about. Construction would begin in 2026, which I know feels forever from now. It is. But because, right, Clinton happening, and as soon as that is done, the bond in this building, our last payment is next year. And then we can begin the process of architects, designers, all those other things before a new fence goes up around this building. The plan is that the building will remain functional and operational during the renovation as it did in the last 2 times that the building was renovated. With all that being done, hopefully we'll be opening in 2028, because remember, it is a long time build. So while none of you may be here, maybe, I don't know, or you may be back, right? You can come back for multiple degrees if you want. At least our future generation of students will be able to see that from there. So I will stop there and ask and answer any questions that you all might have. And like I mentioned, this will go up for a vote next year by the student government to sustain the fee. So those who return next year or are elected in the next year will have the opportunity to greenlight the funding for it to move on from there. So questions, comments, concerns, period.
Are there any questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts?
Or thoughts, yes.
Or the thoughts. Jawin?
I have a thought. This might sound ridiculous, but I think there should be a room that's full of dogs and cats, or other pets that the students would want. I'm just saying, I saw a dog last Monday on campus, and it was the happiest I've been since the semester started, so.
Great idea. How about I just bring puppies to campus regardless? We'll just have puppies everywhere. I'm trying to get a sleeping pod in the building so I can take a nap. But let me stop right now, right? Period. Okay. Other questions, other thoughts? Yeah. Oh, sorry. That's not my job, Junior.
Cole, did you have your hand up?
Yeah. What is in your $8 million of soft project costs?
So that is the new furniture. That is I actually have it right here. Hold up. So that's, new furniture, IT, telecommunications, Wi-Fi that we have to put into the building, audio, visual things, new rooms. We have to pay for the new TVs to go into those rooms, a new projection, all of those things. Security systems, because we are adding that 24-hour space. So it will be on a different system than the rest of the building. Moving costs, so when we have to move offices or move things around to make the building activated from there. All of the engineering and architectural fees, construction testing, hazardous materials, analysis, not like there is there, but if there was, agency and state fees, and then a contingency built in there for that. Remember I talked about how we're planning for changes inevitably in cost. We built that into there as ready by the time we get ready to build it or to renovate it.
Landon?
Okay, so when we're looking at the Center of Diversity and Inclusion, is that hoping in the future to expand the staff within that department or more communal, like student use spaces and giving them more space to grow?
So I'm not a fortune teller, but currently the space is being built for new space, new collaboration space. We've looked at K-State opened their new center a couple of years ago, and we looked at the communal space with kitchens and a couple other things in some rooms and study spaces. I inevitably imagine that as that space grows, so will the outputs and the programs and the resources that will be built into that space. Right? If you think about what currently is, and then now it's 2 stories. So I imagine that down the road, right in 2026, is a long time from now, 2028 even further, that there might be the need for additional staff, more because of programs or the growth overall in the office as well. The hope is, right, that we look at what we're currently doing in the space, but then of course, right, as the new space and more space from that expansion probably results in new programs and new initiatives by that point. So yes to both. The first part will be dependent on what ultimately comes out of the office from that space.
Okay. Oh, no? Okay. Anybody else? Seeing none, thank you, Gabe, for this presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Like I mentioned, we are years away, right? But we will still consistently be talking about this, especially in the upcoming year, because we do have to secure the vote from the Senate to move forward with it as well. So, super exciting times. If you have any questions specifically about it or you'd like to see it a little bit differently, feel free to let me know, and I'm happy to sit down and talk to you more about it as well. Cool? Cool. Thank you.
All right, we will now dissolve the committee of the whole and return to regular session. So now moving on to section 10, the final section. Thank you for working with me tonight. Final roll call and adjournment. At this time, we'll take the final roll call. Please remember to turn your clickers on and click A to sign out, and then please do not talk until I adjourn the meeting. All right, I hereby adjourn this meeting at, what time is it? 9:16 p.m. The Student Government Association Senate will stand in adjournment until Wednesday, March 1st at 6:30 p.m.